today is a treat for me. It's been a while, but I get to enjoy a relaxing day at the golf course. The guys have all freed up their schedules for today's game. But before that, I'll prepare some of my favorite Spanish tapas, which we can all enjoy after the game. This should be perfect to cool their heads after I win the game. So the dishes I'm going to cook for the golf buddies after the game, I'm going to make a jamon serrano and manchego cheese croquetas. I'm going to make my style of gambas, loads and loads of garlic. I'm also going to make chorizo, slowly sort of poached in red wine, garlic and thyme. And then I'm also going to make a Moroccan spiced lamb chop with a tzatziki dip. Okay, so tzatziki is basically a Greek dipping sauce made out of cucumbers, yogurt, and just a little bit of sour cream. The first thing we have to do is we just have to get the really tough skin of the cucumber off. So once all of the skin has been removed, we're just going to remove the seeds. Okay, so now that we've got all of the seeds out, we're just going to chop them up into medium-sized cubes. Okay, so now that all of the cucumbers are sort of being cut up into a rough sort of cube, time to draw out a lot of the moisture. To extract all of the moisture from the cucumber, we're just going to season it just a little bit. And that salt is really going to help draw out a lot of the moisture. And then just sort of stir it around, just to make sure that the salt is sort of coating every single piece of the cucumber. And now we just have to let the salt do its thing, leave it in the fridge for about half an hour. Right, so the salt has seemed to do its job. It's really drawn out a lot of the moisture out of the cucumber. And if I stick my finger on it, it's a lot drier than what we started, and you can see there all of the liquid that's sort of come out of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add Greek yogurt to this. To that, we'll add some ground garlic, we'll add some chopped dill, some salt and pepper. That's how simple it is to make tzatziki. Now it's time to get the jamon serrano for the croquetas. Okay, so the first thing we have to do when we get the croquetas on is we have to melt our butter. And we're basically making a roux, which is flour and butter together. Okay, so now that the butter's sort of melted on a really nice low heat, we don't want to boil the butter, we don't want to bring the butter too high of a temperature. We now take it off the heat and we add some flour. So now that we've added the flour into our melted butter, we're just going to put it on the heat and just cook it for about 2 or 3 minutes. And what this is going to do is just going to cook all of the flour out. Now it's time for us to add the milk. And now if we take it off the heat, it's like mashed potato, and it's sort of really dry to the touch. Perfect. Now we can add the manchego cheese. So now we're just going to grate the manchego into the warm manchego base. And now we're just going to gently off the heat. And the manchego is also going to thicken up the base quite a lot, because when you add cheese to something, it's really going to make it sort of nice and thick. once you put the cheese in, don't put it back on the heat, because if you put it back on the heat, all the oils from the cheese is going to come seeping out, and you're going to be left with a really greasy croquetas. So now everything is in, and now it's time to add the jamon serrano. Okay, so now it's time to season it and shape it. So the best way to shape them, get in there, get your hands nice and wet, pick it up like that, and then shape them. Now, you can do them into a ball if you want, just like that. And that's pretty much done. Okay, so now that they're all sort of shaped, we'll stick them in the fridge for 45 minutes, half an hour. They'll firm up, and then we'll put them in flour, eggs, and breadcrumbs, and then deep fry them so they're crispy on the outside and really soft in the middle. So now to go with that really sort of creamy tzatziki, we are going to make a Moroccan spiced lamb. Okay, all of these spices are very well mixed. We're now just going to sort of lightly coat them, sprinkle it over. We're really just going to gently pat them down. And now I'm just going to turn them over and just do exactly the same. Going to leave them inside the fridge for half an hour just to get all those flavors like really soaking into the meat, and then we'll cook a medium rare because it's a really nice soft cut of meat, so we don't have to braise it, just high heat, and we're just going to sear it until it's pink in the middle. Right, so next we have to get the spicy gambas on. So I have 3 bowls here. One's for the meat, one's for the head, and one is for the shells. So we're gonna take the shrimp and just pinch it behind the head. We're then just gonna stick our finger in underneath the shells and just remove all of the shells gently. But we wanna keep the tail piece on just for presentation. Now we have to get rid of the vein. If you open it up, there you can see that digestive tract needs to come out. So for our gambas, we need the shrimps, and we also need quite a lot of garlic. So I'm gonna get about 4 or 5 bulbs of garlic. I'm gonna peel them. I'm not gonna chop them. I'm just gonna slice them as thin as I can. Okay, so now that everything's ready for our gambas, the first thing we have to do is we just have to get a pan onto a medium-high heat. And don't be shy with the olive oil. This is gonna help us create the sauce. We just tip the garlic in. I'm really going to utilize all of the flavor that's sort of stuck in these shrimp heads. So I'm just going to throw them in. I think if we throw it away, we're just going to lose all of that flavor. From brown garlic to burnt garlic is literally 10 seconds. So from here, we give it a really good salt and pepper, and we just lay them in there like that. And this is literally gonna take 3 or 4 seconds on each side. So now that the shrimp is sort of halfway cooked, we're now gonna add the little zing to it, right? Which is gonna be cayenne pepper. And we're just gonna put about half a teaspoon. Okay, now the shrimp is sort of cooked. We now have to make the sauce. We're just gonna take it off the heat, and add just a little bit of brandy. Once the brandy's gone in, we just want to cook it until all the alcohol is gone. We don't want any of the alcohol. We just want the little bit of sweetness that the brandy gives us. Now just a little squeeze of lemon juice, just to cut through all of that garlic. And then finally, just a really good sort of sprig of roughly chopped parsley. Okay, so now that these croquetas are really, they're firmed up nicely, now it's going to be so much easier for us to breadcrumb it and to put the eggs on them. Okay, so we have 3 bowls here. One bowl is for flour, the other one's for breadcrumbs, and the other one's for eggs. 2 eggs into a bowl. So we just get a really nice light coating on them. We just want to dust them in a little bit of flour. So basically the flour is going to help the eggs stick, and then the breadcrumbs is going to stick to the egg. Always try and keep one hand wet and one hand dry. Otherwise you're going to end up with breadcrumb fingers. All of them. It's now time to get them in a fryer about 180 degrees. So they're really nice and crispy on the outside and really soft and gooey in the middle. So for the next tapas dish I'm going to make is a classic Spanish tapas. It's chorizo cooked in red wine. Now this is very, very simple. There's only 2 things that you need that's very, very important. One is a good quality chorizo, something with a lot of fat content that's still really nice and moist inside, and then you also need a really good bottle of Spanish wine. So now it's time to cut the chorizo. Now tapas basically is bite-sized pieces, 1 or 2 bites maximum. Okay, now that the chorizo is cut, we need about 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. And again, there's no need to peel them. And now we're ready. Okay, so for the chorizo cooked in red wine, we need to get our pan pretty hot and just a little bit of oil. Remember, there's a lot of fat inside the chorizo, so we don't want to add too much oil and make it greasy. Really nice and hot. We just get the chorizo in. Okay, so the chorizo has now been sauteing. There's little sort of brown tinges around them, and they've bled out a lot of their oil, which is perfect, right? So we just get the garlic to go in. Just a couple of sprigs of thyme just goes in there also. Now it's time to get the wine in. So now the red wine's gone in, we just want to lower the heat down to a little simmer, because if we boil this now, we're going to make the chorizo go very, very tough. We're just going to simmer that until half of it's gone, all of the fat is sort of incorporated into the wine, all the alcohol's cooked out, and this is going to be a beautiful thing. Okay, so now the wine has reduced by at least a half. The sauce is thickened up, and the wine and all the spices from the chorizo have sort of mixed together. Give it a taste. Oh, wow. Okay, that's done. Let's go plate. Okay, so our lamb chops have really sort of soaked in all of those Moroccan spices. The spices are really nice and moist, and that means it's really sort of seeped into the meat. Now we're just going to season it and sear it. Okay, so now that our stone grill is really, really hot, we've had it on for at least 10 minutes. Now it's time to sear the lamb. When you're searing lamb, it's very, very important to get your frying pan or your stone grill very, very hot. What that does is it really sort of locks in all of the juices. It sort of seals it, forms a crust on the outside, and that's going to keep all the flavor, all the juices inside. Okay, so the lamb is really nice and brown. We're just going to give it a really good season and then just flip them over and do exactly on the other side. Okay, so those brown marks over there, all of the nice charred bits, that means we've seared it on a really nice hot stone grill. And that's going to keep all the flavor in, it's going to keep all the moisture in, and that is perfect. It's going to be a busy week ahead. but I'll manage to prepare easy-to-eat picnic food for the family and friends as they enjoy a nice afternoon. To get the recipes from the show, check out my website, markettomaster.com. And if you want to see behind the scenes and latest updates, follow us on Facebook and Twitter.